Emma Carter never questioned the man she loved until she discovered the horrifying truth. Ryan Mitchell wasn't who he claimed to be. Hidden within his laptop was a disturbing collection of missing persons reports, chilling photographs, and terrifying videos. As Emma dug deeper, she uncovered a truth more horrifying than she could have imagined. Ryan had another name, a dark past, and a terrifying secret, one that placed her next on his list. Emma Carter had always been cautious when it came to love. She had been through enough heartbreak to know that relationships weren't always what they seemed. But when she met Ryan Mitchell, everything felt different. He was the kind of man she had always hoped for, charming, attentive, and reliable. Their relationship had blossomed quickly, and within months, she found herself falling deeply for him. Ryan seemed to fit perfectly into her life. He was patient, always there when she needed him, and never failed to make her feel special. Whether it was surprising her with her favorite coffee on a stressful morning or planning weekend getaways to the countryside, he had a way of making everything feel effortless. Even her friends and family adored him. Her mother often remarked how lucky she was to have found someone so dependable, and her best friend envied how smoothly their relationship seemed to be going. Despite how perfect everything appeared, there were small things about Ryan that didn't quite add up. He never spoke about his past, dodging questions about his childhood or family with a practiced ease. If she asked about old friends, he would simply shrug and say he had lost touch. Emma assumed he had a difficult upbringing and didn't want to talk about it. She didn't push him. After all, everyone had things they preferred to keep private. But it wasn't just his past that felt strange. Ryan never let her visit his apartment, always insisting on staying at her place instead. When she asked about it, he claimed his place was too messy, that he was embarrassed for her to see it. It became a running joke between them, something Emma teased him about, never thinking much of it. He also never posted on social media, which struck her as odd in an age where everyone shared their lives online. When she playfully suggested taking a selfie together for Instagram, he laughed and said he preferred to keep his personal life offline. One evening, after a long day at work, Ryan had fallen asleep on the couch while they were watching a movie. Emma, feeling restless, decided to look for something new to watch on his laptop. She had used it before without issue, usually just to check emails or stream a show. But as she scrolled through his files, she noticed something odd, a folder tucked away in a section of his hard drive. The title was a random string of letters and numbers, something that didn't make sense. A strange feeling settled in her stomach as she clicked on it. The folder was filled with documents and images, their file names just as cryptic as the folder itself. Curiosity turned into unease as she opened the first file. It was a scanned newspaper article about a missing woman from a neighboring city. Then another and another. Her breath hitched as she realized what she was looking at. The man she loved was hiding something. Emma's hands trembled as she clicked through the folder, her pulse pounding in her ears. The screen was filled with files, dozens of them, each containing pieces of information that sent a chill through her body. She opened another document, her stomach twisting as she read the words. It was a missing persons report. A young woman, around her age, had vanished without a trace 2 years ago. Emma's fingers hovered over the touchpad as she scrolled through the document, her breath catching when she saw the accompanying photo. The woman was smiling, her eyes bright, unaware that this would be the image tied to her disappearance. Emma closed the file, her heart hammering, but she couldn't stop herself from clicking on another. It was another missing persons report, different name, different city, but eerily similar circumstances. A sinking feeling settled in her gut as she continued. The pattern was undeniable. Every file contained information about missing women from various locations, all spanning the past several years. Some had news clippings detailing their disappearances, while others contained case notes from what looked like police reports. Emma felt dizzy as she tried to process what she was looking at. Then she saw the photos. At first, they seemed harmless, pictures of smiling women, possibly taken from their social media profiles. But as she scrolled further, the images became more unsettling. The same women appeared again, but this time they looked different. Their faces were no longer lit with carefree smiles. Their eyes were wide with fear, their expressions frozen in silent terror. Some were tied to chairs, others crouched in dark, windowless rooms. Their faces were streaked with tears, their clothing disheveled. Emma's stomach twisted violently. These weren't just photos, these were real people. These were victims. Her breath came in short gasps as she moved the cursor toward the video files at the bottom of the folder. A cold sweat broke out along her spine as she hesitated. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to stop, to close the laptop and pretend she had never seen any of this. But she couldn't. She had to know the truth. The video opened with a grainy, shaky frame. The camera appeared to be placed in a dimly lit basement. In the center of the screen, a woman sat on the floor, her hands bound in front of her, her body shaking. She was crying, her voice barely above a whisper. Then, from the corner of the frame, a shadow moved. A figure stepped into view, and even though the footage was dark, Emma recognized the voice instantly. It was Ryan. A strangled noise escaped Emma's throat as she slammed the laptop shut. She staggered backward, pressing her hand against her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Her mind raced. The man she loved, the man she had shared her life with, wasn't who he claimed to be. He was hiding something unthinkable, something horrifying. And now she was trapped in his world, with no idea what to do next. Emma couldn't breathe. Her chest felt tight, her body frozen in place as she tried to process what she had just seen. The room around her blurred, her vision tunneling as panic gripped her. Ryan, her Ryan, wasn't the man she thought he was. He wasn't just hiding something small, like a past mistake or a family secret. He was hiding something monstrous. She forced herself to move, to think. She needed answers. She needed to know who he really was. Shoving the laptop aside, she grabbed her phone and started searching for any trace of Ryan Mitchell online. She typed his name into social media platforms, into search engines, into public records databases. Nothing. There were no childhood photos, no high school yearbooks, no old addresses. It was as if he had appeared out of nowhere just a few years ago. Emma's stomach churned as she checked his wallet, her fingers shaking as she pulled out his driver's license. The name was there, Ryan Mitchell, but something about it felt off. The card was smooth, too pristine for someone who had supposedly carried it for years. She dug deeper, flipping through the few cards he kept tucked behind it. Then she found it, a second ID buried beneath the rest. The moment she pulled it out, her blood ran cold. The face on the card was the same, but the name printed beneath it was different. Daniel Brooks. Her entire body tensed. Who was Daniel Brooks? Why did Ryan, if that was even his real name, have an ID under a different identity? She quickly typed the name into a search engine, dreading what she might find. Within seconds, an old news article popped up. The headline made her stomach drop. Daniel Brooks, suspected in multiple disappearances, declared dead in 2015. Emma's breath hitched as she clicked the link, scanning the article as fast as her eyes would allow. According to the report, Daniel Brooks had been the prime suspect in a string of missing persons cases. Several women had vanished without a trace, all with chilling similarities. The police had been closing in on him when his remote cabin mysteriously burned down. The fire had been ruled accidental, and although no body was ever recovered, investigators had assumed he died in the blaze. With no evidence to prove otherwise, the case had gone cold. Emma's hands went numb, her entire body trembling as the truth settled in. Ryan wasn't Ryan. He was Daniel Brooks. He had faked his death and started over with a new identity, slipping back into society unnoticed. And now, she was living with him, sharing her life with him, trusting him. A sudden wave of nausea hit her as she realized the full weight of her situation. She was alone in her apartment, with a man who wasn't just lying about his past. He was a predator who had managed to escape justice once before. And if she wasn't careful, she might be the next woman added to his collection of missing faces. Emma's mind raced as she tried to process what she had uncovered. The man she had loved, trusted, and built a life with wasn't just hiding a dark past. He was a predator, a ghost who had escaped justice by erasing his old identity and creating a new one. She felt sick as she realized the depth of his deception. Every tender moment, every reassuring smile, every loving touch had been a lie. The man sleeping beside her every night had been living under a false name, all hiding his true nature. She knew she couldn't stay. She had to get out, had to escape before he realized she knew the truth. But fear kept her frozen. What if he was already watching her? What if he had planted cameras in her apartment, tracking her every move? What if he could sense the shift in her behavior? The thought of pretending nothing had changed made her stomach churn, but she had no choice. If he suspected that she had discovered his secret, there was no telling what he might do. Emma forced herself to act normal when Ryan came home that evening. She greeted him with a forced smile, hiding her trembling hands by keeping them busy with housework. Every second felt unbearable, but she knew she had to be careful. She couldn't let him see the fear in her eyes. Ryan moved around the apartment like he always did, making small talk, asking about her day. But now, every word he spoke felt like a threat. The man she once adored was now a stranger, a dangerous predator hiding in plain sight. That night, she barely slept. She lay stiffly in bed beside him, her heart hammering as she listened to his steady breathing. Every sound in the dark apartment made her flinch, her mind filled with worst-case scenarios. If he woke up and saw her acting differently, would he hurt her? Would he silence her before she could tell anyone what she knew? The next morning, she made up an excuse to leave the apartment early. She told Ryan she had errands to run, forcing herself to smile as she kissed him goodbye. The moment she was out the door, she ran to her car, locking the doors as soon as she got inside. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone and dialed the police. At the station, she told them everything about the folder on his laptop, the missing women, the video, and the name Daniel Brooks. She handed over the evidence she had copied from his computer, her voice breaking as she explained who she had been living with. The officers listened carefully, their faces darkening as they reviewed the files. One of them left the room, making a call. Within minutes, the situation had escalated. Emma sat frozen as she overheard one officer mutter that Ryan, or Daniel, had already picked his next victim. And this time, the name listed was her own. Emma's blood ran cold as she processed what the officer had just said. She was supposed to be next. All this time, while she had been planning a future with Ryan, he had been planning something far more sinister. Her mind flashed back to the folder, the photos, the videos, the women who had come before her. Had they once sat where she was now, realizing too late that they were living with a monster? She shuddered at the thought. The police wasted no time. Within minutes, officers were dispatched to her apartment. Emma wasn't allowed to return home. Instead, she was taken to a safe location while law enforcement prepared to arrest Ryan, or rather, Daniel. The plan was simple. They would wait for him to come home and take him into custody before he had a chance to flee. As she sat in the police station, time dragged on. Every passing second felt unbearable. She kept expecting her phone to ring, for Ryan to call and ask where she was. Her heart pounded at the thought of what would happen if he realized she had gone to the police. Would he run? Would he come looking for her? Hours later, the news finally came. The police had arrived at her apartment, but Ryan was already gone. His car was missing, and his phone had been turned off. He had vanished without a trace. Panic gripped Emma. He knew. Somehow, he had figured it out. Maybe he had sensed her fear, or maybe he had checked his laptop and seen that she had accessed the files. Whatever the reason, he was gone. And now he was out there, somewhere, knowing that she had betrayed him. The police assured her that they would find him. They put out alerts, flagged his license plates, and contacted authorities in other states. But Emma knew what kind of man he was. He had escaped once before, faked his death, and built a new life. He was smart, careful. If he had slipped away, it was because he had a plan. For weeks, she lived in fear. The police placed her under protective watch, moving her to a secure location, but it didn't ease the terror that followed her everywhere. Every shadow felt like him. Every unknown number calling her phone sent her into a panic. She barely slept, constantly waking in the night, expecting to see his silhouette standing at the foot of her bed. Then one evening, the call finally came. A security camera had caught Ryan in another state, withdrawing cash from an ATM. Hours later, police found an abandoned motel room where he had been staying. He had left behind clothes, fake IDs, and a burner phone. But this time, he hadn't escaped. Not long after, he was spotted trying to buy a bus ticket under yet another alias. The police arrested him on the spot. Emma sobbed when she got the news. It was finally over. The man who had haunted her life, who had planned to make her his next victim, was in custody. She would never know how close she had come to disappearing.